Hello, people. Welcome to our show. I'm Lee Call 3 with my partner and good friend James Proctor. James, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you today, Lee?
Well, James, someone said to me, "He's your partner." What do you mean by that? Nowadays, you
Oh,
can't call someone a partner that's a partner in business. They get other ideas. It's kind of
yeah, no
funny, though, man.
kidding.
Wacky, wackos. But anyway, I
People
don't
are
know why I had
funny.
to share that with you, but I did. But we're going to
No,
get
that's
into
fine.
a very interesting character,
Yeah.
and Johnny Keys.
Yes.
Uh, Now, was his name pronounced Simone or Simone? Because I've heard it Simone.
Yeah, it's actually Simone. I've seen some people say Simone, but it's actually Simone.
Okay, so we'll call him Simone, and if we get it wrong, you guys can correct us underneath this video.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. So what? We're going to talk about. Would anybody known who Johnny Simone was? D Simone, I'm sorry, was if he did not wind up in Phil Leonetti's book and and also in Sammy Gravano's book.
Yeah, so that's a good question. I did a lot of research, and I'll tell you that by far the most of the information about him are in those two books, Mafia Prince and Underboss. But I was able to uh, dig up some stuff from the state of New Jersey. They did there was a huge congressional investigation in the early '80s. He was brought up a little bit. There was also a couple of other books, but to be honest, there's not a lot out there about him. So we had to dig really deep, and also a lot of people have had there's a lot of misinformation about Johnny Keys out there, but we'll be able to definitely clear it up, and I feel very confident about the sources and the information we have for this today.
Well, just so you know, he was a very powerful man in the Philly mob. People don't realize he was the cousin of Bruno of Angelo Bruno. Is that correct?
Yes, he was, and in fact, so Bruno actually came to the. He wasn't even born in the U.S. He came from Sicily when he was you know a small child, but
Right.
Johnny Keys was already there. But the families, they lived together in South Philly, and so as teenagers, they lived together. They were close, and so pretty much he followed Angelo Bruno into that life, and so
Well,
definitely
I heard,
it was powerful.
I actually heard Bruno followed him into the life.
Yeah, there's a couple of things about this. We know that you know there's a couple of stories about that, and so they're almost the same age as well. But
Right.
Bruno, actually was, it could have been either way, actually. So, but
Yeah, and the reason I say that is because I watched
yeah,
a really good video on it, and they said that Bruno was pulled into the life by John Simone. Uh,
yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
I'm
We
wrong,
know
but
that once Simone got in, that Bruno obviously elevated, and and Bruno actually sent Simone down to Trenton. He was out of Trenton, New Jersey. That was where his territory was, and you know, and also Bruno, when he became boss, is the one that elevated Simone to capo. But the thing is that people don't realize about New Jersey is that those when you have a territory like Newark or Trenton or Atlantic City, like Nicky Scarfo, you have a lot of power. And so it's not like New York. I mean, New Jersey, I would say, is mobbed up maybe 5, 10 times as much as New York. And that's kind of hard to believe, but it's true.
and if we go back to the shooting of Bruno,
Yes.
Bruno's fate was sealed when Gambino died because Carlo Gambino was very close to him.
Yes.
And why don't you tell us about that? Because there was a Genovese faction here, Gambino
Hmm.
faction here, and he was kind of stuck in the middle there.
Yeah, and that's a good point. It's actually an interesting story. And so when you look at the Genovese had had a crew down in Jersey. In fact, Bobby Manna was part of that crew and was close to Nicky Scarfo later on. But then the Gambinos had two crews down in New Jersey. They had one in North Jersey and then another in South Jersey, which was more of that Gambino Sicilian faction in the South. But in Trenton, they actually had Gambino soldiers like Nicky Russo there. And so he was close to, Johnny Keys. And so the thing is that the families, all the five families had crews in New Jersey, and Philly had had multiple crews in Jersey, and then you actually had the only family that was out of Jersey, the DeCavalcante family. They were one of the smaller ones. They were out of Elizabeth, but the thing is that when Atlantic City opened up for gambling, that really brought a lot of attention to the mob because they saw there was a lot of money there. Back in the 60s, they had basically given the Philly mob Atlantic City. And what's funny is Bruno actually had quote unquote exiled Nicky Scarfo to Atlantic City because in the 60s, it was just a shithole. Right. It was not a place that it was run down. It wasn't like it was in the 30s and all that. But, when gambling got legalized and casinos were there, you had all the unions and the construction, and Nicky Scarfo became the that kind of wealthiest guy.
They kind of sent them there for bad reasons, and it started turning into a good reason for Nicky. And, so Stanfa is an interesting character in this because people say, Stanfa was with Bruno when he was shot. Yes, and he did get injured. But here's what people don't realize. He was not a long-time driver for Bruno. No. He was actually placed there.
Yeah.
And he wasn't supposed to be shot.
No, he wasn't supposed to be shot.
And after Angelo Bruno was shot, Stanfa was in the hospital, and they went and visited him in the hospital.
Yeah.
And they basically said to him, they wanted to make sure he was okay. They didn't mean to shoot him and stuff. But this whole thing was a massive plot. But it backfired because explain who Frank Terry was. Because Frank Terry really left some people hanging on this.
Yeah, he did. And so what happened was he was a guy down in he had kind of two roles. So he ran the Genovese down in Jersey. I believe he was out of Newark. And then you had he was also a front boss for the family. And so most people thought he was the actual boss of the Genovese family, outsiders thought that, but he definitely wasn't. He was kind of at the same level as like, Fat Tony Salerno, someone like that. But, he was a front boss. And by the early 80s, it was really Chin that was, managing and kind of running that family from behind, kind of as the puppet master.
And they wanted to deal drugs, and Bruno was against the dealing drugs, so they decided that it was time for him to go. And so explain to us how the consigliere came into this, Captain Gero.
And so he actually Captain Gero actually came in the mid 70s or early mid 70s. And so, he was initially close to Bruno, but then, this guy was looking for opportunity. He saw weakness. Once you had Carlo Gambino pass away, that was the person that was closest to Bruno, with the commission. And so, Caponero thought that he could take over the family, and he actually tried to get permission. So, he had a couple of meetings with the Genovese, but
Frank Terry may have given him permission.
He did. He
Yes,
probably did give him permission because he wanted to go in there, but it was a double cross. He wanted to infiltrate more into the rackets in Jersey, and so it was a huge setup. And maybe Chin even knew, but what we do know is that when they called the meeting after Bruno was killed and Caponegro had to go and talk to Chin, that
and they actually,
Frank Terry said,
I'm sorry, he went in and actually met with members of the commission. Is that correct?
You're talking about before he met with Chin the last time?
No, very last time when they killed him.
Oh, okay. No, it was just
he goes in and meets with a group. Explain how that meeting went.
Yeah. So these were all Genovese people. So you had Fat Tony Salerno, you had Frank Terry, you had Chin there, and so yeah, they met there, and so the thing was that besides not having the authority to authorize a hit, talking about Frank Terry, he was trying, Frank Terry was wanting to infiltrate with rackets, and so the decision was that you did not have permission. Frank lied and said that he never gave permission, and so at the end, the punishment was death.
He never left the building.
No, he never left the building.
They tortured him and the guy that was with him, and they found both their bodies in the trunk of a car.
It's his brother-in-law, Alfred Salerno. He was, they found him in the trunk of a car, beaten, and they found him in a car in the Bronx. And then there was another guy later that named Frank Sindone that got murdered as well for going against the family or going against the commission.
Then they decided to take out Chicken Man Testa too.
Yeah,
and so this is a plan. Testa was literally put there temporarily, and they said, okay, we're going to resolve this, and we're going to put our people in charge here. Would you say that's pretty much what they did?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Because you got to understand, this was almost, to me, this reminded me of the Cold War between the U.S. and the Soviet Union. So you had the Genovese and Gambinos, and so they were fighting over territory in Jersey, and so Philly was the smaller family that they wanted to, they wanted to take advantage of that, and so the Chicken Man, Philip Testa, was made the boss, but he was someone that the Chin and the Genovese felt would be supportive of what the Genovese wanted, and so that's what.
And Caponegro was he had no problem with Testa, pretty much. Am I guessing?
Yeah.
Right?
He didn't have any problem with Testa, and Johnny Keys. There's a couple of stories. As far as the Bruno part, some people say that he was totally in the. And I've heard, even some other podcasts say he was involved in the in the Bruno situation, and that he was going against his cousin. And then I've heard other stories that he wasn't. And
exactly, they don't know that there's two sides to that story.
There's two sides, but with the Chicken Man Testa, I know 100% that Johnny Keys was not happy about Philip Testa being made the boss, and the main reason for that is that he was very, talking about Johnny Keys, he was very loyal to the family. He had made a lot of money for the family. He was an old timer. He had been there. And Philip Testa, even though he was the underboss for Bruno, he wasn't as respected with the rank and file as Johnny Keys was. And Johnny Keys felt that he should be the boss. And so he was not happy about it.
And Caponegro, he went to the Cleveland mob. I mean, these guys weren't thinking. I mean, you want the Cleveland mob to have something to do with this, but they betrayed him.
Yeah, they betrayed him, and so, and what happened?
I'm sorry, they were using the bombs at that time.
Yeah, they
Cleveland.
were using the bombs, and so
And they
Johnny
saying that
Key.
Cleveland was involved with
Mhm.
the bombs and said that's how you should take out Testa, and they blew him up on his porch.
Yeah, exactly. And so the Cleveland boss was a guy named James Licavoli, and he was friends with Johnny Keys, and so Keys thought that he could trust the guy, and then unfortunately, even though he stated that he would support Johnny Keys, he actually went to the commission or went to the Genovese and said, "Hey, this guy's trying to make a move."
Right. So everybody's betraying Johnny Keys. They're betraying Captain Negro. He's betrayed. Their their fate is sealed, and they don't even know it when they're doing all this stuff. Huh?
Yeah, exactly. And then even to make things worse, they pull Paul Castellano into it because if you remember, I was mentioning earlier that in Trenton you had a Gambino crew there, and Johnny Keys was close to Nicky Russo, and so they uh, other people in the family said, "Hey, they talk all the time," and so Chin was like, went to Paul and said, "What's going on here? Are you guys trying to make a move? What's going on?" And Paul was, seemed to be very subservient to Chin. He was,
Because
it's like he,
they also got into business together with the Genovese family at that time,
yes, they
and
did.
Paul did not want to take a chance of that being affected. And on top of that, I think that he was kind of scared of the Chin.
He was, and in fact, they had some problems just previously with this guy in Bridgeport, Connecticut. The Gambinos and Genovese were in Connecticut, and there was a longtime capo, Frank Piccolo, that that the Genovese wanted taken out, and Paul said, "Yeah, go ahead," and then that's when Paul lost respect of the families of the Gambinos because it's one thing to say, yeah, take out a capo, but it's another thing if you're going to let that family do the deed. You're supposed to do it yourself, and so or have your own people do it. And so it really looked bad for Paul, looked very weak. And now you have this situation where Paul's not going to take a chance, and so Paul tells Chin, because you remember the Genovese took care of Frank Piccolo. Well, in this case with Johnny Keys, Paul said, "We will take care of this for you, Chin."
Uh, and we'll pick it up from this point because one thing we do know is Sammy Gravano tells a lot of tall tales.
Yes.
So, but we're going to play first. This is not in his words. This is part of a. This is a short. I'm going to put up real quick, and
Okay.
this is Leonetti talking about the hit on Keys.
Okay.
Okay, let me get that.
Word.
And people, this is from Mafia Crime Stories 81. This is Dirt Short. We're using it. Please go to that channel and subscribe to them.
Gets back to my uncle that Johnny Keys was plotting against Phil Testa and was doing so through the Gambinos. My uncle reports this to Bobby Manor in New York, and Bobby says he is going to look into it. A few days later, Bobby sent word down that he is sending a kid down named Sammy Gravano, who is with the Gambinos, to talk to us about it. He tells us we can trust him, that this Sammy is La Cosa Nostra and respected by all of the families in New York. Sammy was known as a hitter, a killer. A few weeks later, the bullet-ridden body of Johnny Keys Simone was found in a Staten Island landfill. The hit team, led by the up-and-coming Gambino family hitman, Salvatore Sammy the Bull Gravano, had kidnapped Simone from the parking lot of a posh country club on the outskirts of Trenton and drove him to a secluded area in Staten Island and pumped several bullets into the back of his head.
Okay, so pretty much there. That's from the book Mafia Prince.
Yeah.
It's amazing how these informants call themselves princes, and they still refer to themselves as bigwigs in these books, but in reality, they're informants, is what they are.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so we have that. He confirmed that, and we're going to play. So pretty much, we're going to play right here what Sammy says in
Okay.
his video about meeting Johnny Keys, getting him into the van, and what happened at that point.
Okay.
fucking truck going with him.
Okay. Figures that'll do that right now. Okay, but in general, though.
Let's get on the fucking true way and go back. We have plastic ties. His hands are tied together. His feet are tied together.
Ah, you got to be kidding me.
We're looking at him. He's looking at me. A kid. A punk. And he laughs. A punk, huh? I got a feeling you're doing what fucking 4 families couldn't do. 5 families, if you want to count our family and the whole commission. Couldn't do. You got me sitting in this fucking van.
See, that part right there, we don't know whether that's true, that he said you're doing what 5 families couldn't do.
Right.
Okay. That's just Sammy trying to pump himself up, I think, about how great he was.
Yeah, he wanted to make this into a I mean, it's a wonderful story. When you listen to it, when I was first heard it, I was just captivated until I knew, that a lot of these stories are, are embellished. We know that we do know that Johnny Keys was kidnapped at the Skyview Country Club there in Washington Township.
Sammy was involved. We do know that. Leonetti pretty much confirms that.
Yeah.
And it just happened, and that's the reality of it.
Sammy, I killed over 50 people in my lifespan. I'm a hitman's hitman. I can't believe what you just did. Sounds like he's complimenting me on a fucking hit. And he's the guy who's going to get hit. Yeah, all right, John. We'll go in. Now, he tells me, this may be the greatest fucking hit that took place.
Once again, that's Sammy saying this, the greatest hit ever. Sammy's just putting that stuff in there, but the fact of the matter is we do know that he did pick him up and he did kill him.
Yeah.
But you fucking up a little bit. Yeah? How am I fucking up? The back windows, those big trucks, tractor trailers passing. They all have these CBD things. They'll see me sitting in the back, tied up, and all these other guys in here, they'll see in, and they'll call the cops. I look at the windows. He's right. He's right. Get something, get some rags, cover them fucking windows. He's right. This guy's telling me how to do a hit on himself. Why the fuck would he do that? I can't, it's not registering. We're going in. All of a sudden, he says, Sammy, go in my pocket in the front. I got some pills. What kind of pills? Nitroglycerin pills. I'm feeling pain in my chest. I don't want to die of a heart attack. Give it to me under my tongue. It's got to stay there. Every 5 minutes, put another one in front, especially if I get worse. I'm doing it. This man's worried about a heart attack. What the fuck kind of guy do I got here? What the fuck is this man like? I'm dumbfounded. He's making sure I don't get arrested by blocking windows. He's complimenting me on work I'm doing. He don't want to die of a heart attack. He's now asking me to loosen up the ties a little bit. And he's talking to me. I did that to him in the restaurant. Is he doing that to me? Does he have a surprise for me? He's got 50 hits.
I'm sorry about the interference, people. This is a very interesting story, but I can't help it when this happens. So far, what do you think of this, James?
No, I mean, it's definitely captivating and emotional. You know, make one hell of a movie. The thing about the 50 hits, you know what's interesting? I can't find any records of hits that he did. I'm sure he did hits. I'm not saying he didn't, but what's interesting is this guy was so much under the radar that you didn't.
Yeah, but we
nothing.
said the same thing about Sonny Francis too. You can't find a record of his hits.
You
These
can't.
guys were professional hitmen. That's what they did. They killed.
Yeah,
And they didn't. You know, and
they did it the right way for that life. You know, meaning it. You know, not that killing's right, but just saying if you're a hitman, he did it the right way.
He said it. But I heard it from other people. Nicky, Joey. He was a beast. A top hitman for Angelo Bruno. For years and years and years. Okay. We got him, everybody, Louis, everybody, we got him wrapped up like you couldn't move enough muscle. And at the last minute, I put my hand over his mouth real hard. He doesn't move a fucking muscle. No squirming, no nothing. I get through. His words are ringing in my ear. This is Cosa Nostra. This has nothing to do with the fucking cops. He's not going to resist. He says, Sammy, I got to make you an offer. What? I got a lot of money. I can make you a rich man. I said, please, John, don't. There's no money in the world. Like you said, this is Cosa Nostra, bro. There's no money. Money it don't exist to me. Especially right now. Please don't. I'm starting to develop a respect for you. How you're conducting yourself. I don't know if I could be like this, what you're doing, and how you are. I don't think I could act like that. So don't do that. If it's not you, make sure it's a friend of ours. One of these guys is a friend of ours. Done. Take my shoes off. Don't let me be found with my shoes. Why do you want to do that? My wife is always worried about the life and worried about things. I'm going to die in the street. More or less like you're going to die with your shoes on in the street. And I always told her, don't worry, I'll be home. I'll die with my shoes off. It'll mean something to her. She'll know that I was thinking about her in her final stages. Oh my God.
Okay, well, I'm not going to go through that, but I just wanted people to see. Basically, he walks out the truck, the van. They shoot him. He's dead. They throw his body. They dump him in a dump. They find the body.
Yeah.
At least he was found. At least I didn't chop him up and make him totally disappear, right?
Right, and they said that, you know, they basically took a couple of steps from the van without without a word, he lowered his head, quiet and dignified. They said that it was Louis Melito that did the shot, and that's what Sammy said. Then you also had Stymie there, but I believe it was Louis Melito that did the shot. It wasn't Sammy that shot Simone, but that's a story that he gave, and obviously he was found, shot in the head with his shoes off too.
And this was, so you got the hit on Bruno going. So this is like everything comes tumbling down. It's like a bunch of dominoes. Everything goes into effect. And as it turned out, Stanfa, who was probably involved in the shooting, well, most likely was involved in the shooting. I heard, and this is what when we're researching the Philly mob, I heard, oh, he was an innocent guy with Stanfa. I don't think so.
Yeah.
If he was innocent, why did they go see him at the hospital the following day?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I wondered too. And there was there's also talks about how Stanfa might have been close to the Gambinos. And this was a way to, but all we know is the Genovese and the Gambinos, they were fighting over territory, and that Johnny Keys was definitely involved with the Chicken Man's Testa's death, and possibly his own cousin. But the guy was a real man. He was tough. He was respected. I'm sure he took out dozens of people.
Yeah, and you know what it is. You have a lot of hitters in the mafia back then that a body just would show up somewhere and nobody would ever know who did it.
Mm-mm.
The problem with this, when this war broke out, everybody was dying for the next, until Scarfo came in and wiped out everybody. But then eventually he started wiping out people again. And there was people feared Scarfo. Would you say that's basically why he gained control for the years he did?
Yeah. People feared him. Also, he wasn't respected. He was a small guy. He's probably how Sammy Gravano would have been if Gravano was the boss. Very short guy, Napoleon complex.
And the men that he had around him were killers.
Yeah. I mean, Leonetti, all those guys were killers. But the war continued until 1984. That's when, the thing about him getting power was that he was close to Bobby Manna, and that helped for Scarfo to get in power and solidified it. But he wasn't liked, and he lost respect as well with the commission because of all the bodies. It was just getting too much. But even when he goes in the late 80s, that's not the end of it. Then you have the next wars.
And you had Stanfa, and you had Merlino,
mm-hmm.
and you had what was it, Young Turks?
The Young Turks.
So it didn't stop.
No.
And I think that Philadelphia really wasn't respected by New York. It was like New York, the New York mob acted like it was theirs.
They did.
They acted like Philadelphia belonged to them. And
I think
that one of the, because when Stanfa came in, his ties to the Sicilians and I believe the Cherry Hill gang, and he was tied tight with the Gambinos.
Yeah, he was the South crew of the Gambinos. The Cherry Hill Gambinos, the Sicilian faction, and that's exactly the truth. And those guys.
Yeah, Joey Merlino came in, and it was probably the first time Philadelphia wasn't tied. Merlino would tell them to go to hell, basically.
Yeah. And it was basically 20 years of war. 20 years of war. And then the thing we can say, for good or for bad, once Merlino got in there, was able to solidify some power, the war stopped, And
he went right after Scarfo's son to get him out of the way. And they did they started telling New York no.
Yes, that's true.
And New York was always like, "This Philadelphia belongs to us."
Yeah, and then and part of it too is by 2001, what had happened was that you'd already had the commission trial, you'd had all the bosses going away, then you had the Bonanno family with Messino, and they just didn't have the power they did, and they had too much going on internally to worry about. What Philly was doing. And then also by that time, the allure of Atlantic City was, it kind of had its time by then,
Yeah. The places that were surviving were minimal at most.
Yeah.
And everything was going toward Vegas. But the thing was, the corporations came in and pushed the mob out. In the end, the corporation always wins.
Yeah, they do.
They pushed the mob out, and they took back the casinos.
Yes,
Las Vegas and Atlantic City. But it's a fascinating story, though, James, because we hear so much about Simone. And at first, when Sammy was telling the story, I said, "This never happened," because you don't believe it. A lot of things Sammy says ain't true. But then Phil Leonetti kind of confirmed it.
Yes.
And so it's obvious it happened. I don't think it happened where he's in the back seat saying, "Oh my God, you're the best hitman ever, Sammy." I'm surprised.
Yeah, he has to always be the hero. That's the thing.
I'm surprised he didn't ask him. Do you think that he asked Sammy for his autograph before he?
Yeah, no kidding.
Say, Sammy, before you throw my body in the dump, can you sign it with a magic marker? Sammy Gravano?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I've heard that he's wanting to make some sort of either a movie or a documentary over the hit, over Simone. I don't know where that's at. I mean, Sammy's talked about it a few times, but who knows?
Well, here's the problem with documentaries nowadays, and why a lot of them don't come into play, is because now they play out with shows on YouTube, and it's like we do document these things. We all have stories, maybe, but nobody heard nothing about Simone before any of this. And then if you look at Jeff Nadeau did something, I believe O.C. Shorts did something. This story has been done. And we're just giving our own version. That's it. That's basically what it comes down to. But nobody would have known who Johnny Keys was if Sammy Gravano didn't come along and tell that story. Because
he would have just been another guy that was found dead, that was a mob hit, that's what it would have been known as,
And that's the thing about the mob genre. It has brought a lot of life to guys that died Louis Molito. Who the hell would have known Louis Molito except the people that knew him? I mean, these are guys that nobody knows unless you're a mob expert. What do they call it? A
mobologist or whatever. Yeah.
But I never knew who Louis Molito was or any of those men that Sammy killed that were part of his crew.
Right.
Or Louis DeBono or all those guys. But now they're kind of brought back to life in here.
And I think that's great, though. That's great that these guys, that they didn't necessarily die without a legacy. At least you're able to see that. And that's, I think that's what, we're trying to do that. That's why we expose Sammy with those lies, because, the people he took out, they deserve the truth to be out there. I know Mikey Scars and others do that as well, but we've made it a point to expose these lies and to bring out the truth so that these families can have dignity. It's just unfortunate what Sammy does. By being a hero, he diminishes what these guys were, and it's just not true.
And everybody's always the Philadelphia experts, let's say Jeff Nadeau and what's his face, Canarsie.
Jeff Canarsie, yeah.
They know a lot about this stuff before this stuff started coming out on here.
Sure.
But not many were guys like that. They're Philadelphia guys, let's say. They're from that area. But guys like us were not. And I think that what happened there is, you had Leonetti and stuff, the book and all that. That kind of helped, and then that Maniac helped. But in the end, though, it was the mob genre that brought Philadelphia to life. And when I see Philadelphia basically as just another territory that New York thought it owned.
Yeah,
and then,
exactly.
And then when Joey Merlino came along, that ownership kind of stopped. He refused to let them own Philadelphia anymore, and this is why they don't own Philly no more.
Yeah, they don't own it. I mean, they've got enough. They're having enough problems trying to, keep New York together. It's they're not dealing with these other families anymore. For the most part, they're letting them do what they need to do, and they'll do stuff down in open territories like Florida still, but it's not like it was.
There's our story, people. Thank you, James. But please subscribe, hit the like button, the reminder bell, and if you want to donate, you're more than welcome to do so. And also, just so people know, we have a couple other things going on, but we also got with Angel Gotti, My Father's Daughter, where we put some stuff on there that we don't put online, and you can go there and watch that stuff. And also, we have our wrestling channel, and that's Wrestling with the Devil. And there's a movie coming out next week that has to do with wrestling, but the Von Erichs, and I think that we're gonna do some stuff on that on the wrestling channel.
Yep.
With that, people, thank you very much.
Thanks,
and have a nice one.